All right, good evening. Once more, we are taking about 30 minutes to cover some literature content because there is a particular client who asked for the summary of that. All right, so we'll be going into the summary, then I'll walk away to talk about Tears of Joy because, again, there are people who asked something about it. So I'll merge together. I do that for about 30 minutes rest, then come back for Live Saga TV. All right, so Long Walk by Eddie Anja is a story that surrounds not a retired actually, but a disturbed individual who once worked in an office. So Camilo worked as a clerk for Mr. Caroli and refused to actually participate in corruption. And that would have made him a millionaire because he refused because he held integrity at heart. He was also professional and wanted accountability. Now, unfortunately, in many countries, if you are accountable, you have integrity and accountability, you may suffer for it. So Camilo is so much irritated and dismisses him. No, Caroli. Caroli actually is very much annoyed and dismisses him from job, okay, immediately. After dismissing, as if that is not enough, Caroli decides to accuse Camilo of countless mistakes that he is not even aware of. So after being sacked, Camilo has to stay 2 years jobless. So his life becomes very unbearable. Of course, you know, joblessness is one of the things, if you don't know what to do to survive, you will have to experience a very tough life. So without a salary, of course, the wife he had, known as Sally, feels that they are quite broke, and she refuses to actually assist him. Instead, she walks away because she says she cannot withstand this life whereby she is not aware of the next meal. So she lives at the worst times, and Camilo does not say anything because such a time, what can you say? Now, Camilo, of course, finds a lawyer who is known as Miss Kananu, someone who can protect him in court because he feels he's innocent. Yeah. So after the suing, he has to find a lawyer, and that is Miss Kananu. Now we see through the story that Kananu is trying all the way to see how she can defend Mr. Camilo. And indeed, she files a petition against the case. So the problem is, remember, Caroli has money, so they keep adjourning the verdict for too long, yeah, so that it cannot end so soon. It reaches a time where Camilo is feeling that things should be brought to end so that he rests. Yeah, so during this entire time, he could not sleep during the night, and he made a habit of just walking around where he lived so that he can cool his mind, okay? Possibly, I guess he had something like depression. Yeah. So one of these days, as he was walking around the streets and thinking about the ex-wife that had never attended the court sessions, only to come when these matters have reached this end. And when the lawyer has reassured him that he's going to make it, the petition, of course, is adjourned again for the case of number E102/2023. And he could cry. Immediately the adjournment was passed, he could cry a lot. And he could actually think of how he had got a punishment that he did not deserve, remembering that he was a man of integrity, a professional who was accountable. Now, he thinks he's being punished for no really cause, and he's tormented for that because he had signed so many checks to assist the needy, the vulnerable, and only by refusing to obey unlawful instructions did he have such an aspect, okay? Yeah, so now we are told in the story that when Sally, the wife of Camilo, left he did not have someone to share his plight with. And the only thing he could decide to have is to have evening walks in the streets. And that would help him to clear his mind. Yeah. So he thought of becoming a different person all the same. And whenever people prepared to sleep, for him, he could wake up and start walking in the streets. And he had mastered everywhere because of the serenity he received and the silence that he could feel from the streets. He could tuck his hand in the pocket and walk around. Now, he tells us that he walked for very long, actually, very long, and covered long distances in his sneakers. And he would not even meet anyone. It's only one day that he was chased by dogs on a street that was lonely, but he turned a corner and ran. So on one of these days, as he was walking like that, he sees a vehicle approaching, and the lights are full light, fierce. You understand how it happens when you're walking in the street and there is a very powerful light ahead of you. It almost blinds you. So a deep voice commanded him to actually surrender, and he stood, raised his hands, so that he could not even see whoever was in the car. Okay. Yeah, so we see that as he turned the streets, he saw a lone car coming from in front, and it flashed very fierce light to his eyes, of course blinding him in the middle of the night. So the deep voice that comes from the car commands him to surrender, stand and raise his hands, and he does so. So he really wondered whether the police could do this, and yet the streets had not had the police for the longest time possible, he knew. So they dropped an envelope and the car sped off. So the guy, Kamilu, peeps through the envelope, and all he sees is a letter from Karoli indicating that they are going to drop the case and seek peace with him. Yeah, because they accused him wrongly. So he walks home holding the letter. But, when I look at this story, I just wonder, why would this man for the longest time possible? Then again, why does he come to look like he's intimidating him? When you look at this story, you realize that Camille was very patient, hopeful, incorruptible, daring, sensitive, keen, creative, whereas Karoli was treacherous, cruel, corrupt, and remorseful. Yeah, and Sally, on the other hand, was very impatient, because you see how she left the moment the husband had a very great challenge. And she's also treacherous, because treacherous comes from betrayal, sort of. So the story is built on aspects of loneliness or despair, selfishness or cruelty, integrity and impunity, hope, poverty, despair, and also we have security. Yeah. And we have a lot of irony. In terms of style, we have irony, we have direct address, dialogue, stream of conscience, monologue, simile, onomatopoeia, idioms, repetition. Yeah, so let me talk about Tears of Joy. I feel like people have also asked something about that story, Tears of Joy. So let me get to it and talk about it. Tears of Joy. A very sweet story. I hope this is the story. Of course, I gave you the characters, I gave you the summary of Tears of Joy, right? Yeah, I gave you the summary of this story. I gave you something to do with the characters, I think. Did I? I believe so. Yeah, I did so. So let me get to maybe discuss themes from this story. Some people have been asking, though I talked about it. Sometimes you talk about something and when people ask, because you did long ago, you forget that you did it. But I'll briefly talk about this story. The story Tears of Joy has various themes such as poor parenting. Of course, when you look at poor parenting, consider Madam Alice. Madam Alice is one teacher and a parent to kids, but she lacked in aspects of parenting. When you look at page 63 of the novel, she would never dare to help the son outgrow bad habits. The son was known of urinating in his bed. And what Madam Alice could do was to laugh about it and comment things like, one day we'll have to swim in the swimming pool within the house. We'll just get costumes and get under your bed to swim, and then we'll have saved money. And he kept letting the boy take a lot of juice in the evening. Also just leave his beddings there, which is very bad. She was also a very poor mother because in terms of parenting, 0. 63, we can see Madam Alice joking about serious mistakes the son did, including talking ill of the workers. Page 64, we see Madam Alice encourage the son to take a lot of juice and just made comments about it, that he can eat as much as he wants because the mother is still alive, unlike some people who lack their parents. Can you imagine? On page 62, Okoye wondered whether Madam Alice expected the son to become responsible and survive on his own, yet she encouraged him to use foul language against the workers. Page 64 again. we could see that he would let the worker remove the mattress, but not the boy himself. Then she could also let the son speak to the workers rudely. Then again, as to poor parenting, we have the theme of proper or good upbringing or good parenting. This is seen in Hakina, the mother to Okoyo and Afandi. We see that she was a very good parent who was responsible. She used to make the children know how to conduct some tasks from work, from school. They also, she also made sure she takes the children to school even though she had very minimal money. And over the holiday, they could come and assist her to just see how they can make some earning. Page 71, we are told that Nafula, though the only daughter, is brought up as a very hardworking, friendly, and respectful, generous girl in the hands of a doctor. We also see that Afandi learns a lot of things from Nafula, actually. She worked hard and dedicated to providing for her children and educating them. Also, this is Hakina. Afandi and Okoyo had never received proper parenting. Their mother had been hardworking. Thank you. In the story, we have the theme of betrayal and selfishness, which is seen through Madam Alice. Madam Alice is depicted as a very selfish individual. She treats Okoyo like trash and refuses to pay him regardless, threatening that if he ever reports, he will have to be reported to the police. Okoyo felt that the uncle had betrayed them because at the funeral he had announced that he will take care of them as children. But when the mother was buried, he had to send them away, as shown on page 38. Check on page 8. The same people who had grown up in Muse's house and had been helped by him, they betrayed him when he was sick because, like, one of them made sure that the family could not stay in the house anymore. And again, they began saying that Hakina had bewitched the husband when they knew the problem. Page 8 shows us that the man whom Muse had helped actually decided to force the Hakina to vacate the house even before they were ready. Page 11 shows us that there was someone who had sold land to Muse and he had paid a big chunk of money. But when he went sick, the man claimed that no money had been paid. We have child labor and trafficking in the story. When you look at page 2, you see that Okoyo is hired by Madam Alice when he is underage. And he had to conduct a lot of tasks in her home, and yet she did not pay him. She could even quarrel and threaten and even deprive him of some needs. Page 95, the Shujas complained that some of their members had been taken away on claims of being assisted, but the reality is that they had been trafficked, right? When you check on the aspect of page 64, you realize that we see that Okoyo was forced to do very funny tasks. For example, he was to collect the dirty mattress, hang it out there, wash the bed sheets on which the son of the teacher had urinated, wash the underwears, dirty socks, and all that. He could also carry heavy loads, finish laundry, and refill storage tanks. A lot of work, right? Law and justice. In the story, we see on page 100 that it was against law to hire an underage, and someone deserved to be charged. And of course, we see that facing Madam Alice. We see that criminals who had almost taken girls for trafficking are also arrested. There is the theme of fate and loss. When you check on page 4 to 5, Muse Pasiliano was a very good teacher. He had helped a lot of people, but he ended up failing in communication, losing memory, running away from home. Then he pours hot water on himself. When he goes for hospitalization, they discover he has schizophrenia. Then he stays in hospital forever. We also see that Hakina dies abruptly from pneumonia, severe pneumonia, and collapses in the house after work when they are planning to go see Muse Pasliano in the hospital. So the children become orphans, just like that on page 14. We see the theme of change. The theme of change comes when Peter, who took to the hills after Okoyo shared the aspect of education, now comes to the social hall for discussion on health and education. Page 4, Muse Pasliano actually was a brilliant teacher. He lost himself slowly from memory to speech, then later on he was trapped totally. And he is hospitalized for 14 good years. Afandi looks at the house that is now sparsely furnished with few wooden stools and remembers the time they had a good life, middle-class life when the father was alive. They had a dining set which was very attractive. There is the theme of delinquency, truancy, and street families in the story. If you check on page 85, you realize that street children are taking glue to feel high. And they are using weapons such as sticks, metal, stones, knives to attack people. Okoye also meets several street kids, including female group known as Shujaz and many more. We also see in the story the aspects. You can check on many evidence of delinquency, then check on poor master-servant relationship, good master-servant relationship, poverty, fear, exploitation, superstition, education, determination, and hope, and any other theme. So thank you. We have taken 22 minutes, but I've seen my bundles are almost over, so let's meet later.